Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from a very clement Oregon. Did you know that you can describe weather as clement? You probably all know inclement weather. I didn't know that people actually used the opposite, clement, as a word, as an adjective, but evidently you can. It means mild. It's mild here in Oregon right now, and that is what I will go with. It's clement. Today on the podcast, if you are listening to this in real time, it's dropping on Monday, August 4th, and I am here sharing a conversation I had recently with Mike Hardenbrook. And Mike Hardenbrook is a fellow author. He wrote a book called No Willpower Required, detailing in a very science-forward way his approach to habit change around alcohol. And you might also know Mike from being the host of the Journey to the Sunny Side podcast, if you ever listen to that show over there. If you've listened to my show for any length of time, you know that Sunnyside is my preferred app of choice regarding change around alcohol and has been a partner of mine for many years. So I have been waiting to talk to Mike, or trying to talk to Mike, I think, for almost a year now, which you'll hear me reference. And I am just very happy to share the book and his work. And we come at things from a very similar approach, but also different in some ways. So I think you'll get a lot out of our conversation. And I invite you to go check out the links and learn more about the book and other things that Mike is involved with. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Mike Hardenbrook. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being here on the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. It has taken us a hot minute to finally line up our calendars, and I am just so excited to have you on and share your book and all the things that you've been up to with my audience. So welcome.
Thanks, Molly. It's great to be here. It's definitely well worth it. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So I love the title of the book, and you and I align so closely on the sciencey side of habit change. Talk to me a little bit about your story in terms of where this all started, why you decided to change your own relationship with alcohol, and then eventually go on to write your book. Would you?
Oh, absolutely. Happy to share. And, I started at high school age, probably as far as alcohol goes, pretty common, just drinking on the weekends. Then I got into college and I joined a fraternity. And of course, there were bars and drinking and probably excessive drinking, especially being in a fraternity. But I would say nothing too out of the norm when it comes to just being young, youthful, and rebellious. I got all my classwork done. I graduated, I did grad school. And as I got into adulthood, I was drinking less, to be honest, but I was also going out less. And after the day would be done, this started in grad school and then into work full time, I would just be like, I want to feel like I'm still doing something, going out and doing stuff. So I at the girlfriend at the time, I said, let's, hey, do you want to split a bottle of wine? Which I really never drank at home. And so we started doing that. And then it's a slippery slope. It starts to be like, that's what you do after work. And of course, I was still in my late 20s, still going out to social things and drinking more on the weekends and still doing a little bit of that. But as it faded on, and I moved into entrepreneurship, I didn't have a boss. I didn't have accountability except for to myself and my performance. And I tended to be able to still get up and do everything that I needed to do. But the alcohol did gradually creep up. What would be splitting a bottle of wine over years turned into a bottle of wine to myself. And then it was anywhere between 1 to 2 bottles of wine in the evenings. And it wasn't blackout drunk and it wasn't anything crazy. And it's like I said, I get up every single day. I'd usually go for a run, try and sweat it out, kind of get myself right, drink a green smoothie. I was big into fitness. And so I had this loop going on. And on the exterior, everything looked great. I had a business, I had a family. I wasn't like out of control, which sort of kept it going longer. But over time, I really was like making these promises to myself and getting stuck. I'd wake up and I'd say, I need to change. I want to be better. And I really wasn't worried about like health at that time because I was ignorant. I didn't understand the health consequences, but I was just thinking, I'm so good in all these other parts of my life. I work out every day, I sauna, I do breath work, I'm an entrepreneur. But at the end of the evening, the only way I could really turn that thinking mind off, it was a light switch. The only demarcation of between work, since I was my own boss, and stopping work was opening a bottle of wine. And so that became my relief to say I can stop working. And then all day long, I'd sort of get over that and say, I'm not doing this again. And then I'd get to the end of the day and I'd think, whew, I got everything done. That was hard. I pushed through, feeling crappy in the morning. I'm feeling better now. Boy, I deserve, to have a drink and kick back. And that just repeated for close to 2 decades, and I had tried multiple things to stop that. I mean, I'd gone anywhere from Googling, am I an alcoholic, to reading books, to making promises not having alcohol in the house or only drinking on the weekends. But the result ultimately was always the same, that it was either a stop before it started or it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, and it sounds very familiar, to be honest.
Yeah, so I wanted to take a pause there before I moved forward to just, that's sort of where I found myself at this this loop that I was just stuck in over and over again. And I just felt like there had to be a better way. And I know you can connect with this, that I felt like I was also stuck because I was unwilling to say that I was powerless over this thing, that I had a disease, and that the only way out was for the rest of my life, give up drinking. And it wasn't that I wanted to hold on to drinking, but really I just did not connect with that admission and root. And of course, then I felt even worse because that meant that I was potentially in denial. And so what happened was that I would do some breaks, 30-day breaks, and I'd find myself right back to where I was pretty quickly. And those breaks were really, really difficult. But in these times, I started doing sort of what you did, which was nerding out a little bit, like what's going on with behaviors and habits. And over time, so I'll give you the fast forward. Over time, uh, I was able to take a step out of this loop that I was stuck in, re-examine what was going on in my life, do some experiments. I don't have a perfect record, but there was a lot of trial and error in there. But eventually now, if you fast forward to today, I wrote a book because I wanted to help people that felt stuck in the same way I was. And I really only wrote it for one person. First, I started writing it for me to just in my journal longhanded. But then I felt like there's got to be one other guy or woman that is exactly where I was years before this. And so I should keep writing this book and actually publish it And if I can only reach that one person and give them a fast forward and a roadmap to success that they feel like that they is achievable, then I owed it to do that. And so I actually wrote the book Longhanded, No Willpower Required, a neuroscience approach to change your habits with alcohol. And that led me to now I run the podcast for Sunnyside that helps people drink less with really high success rates, which you talk about so generously here on the podcast, and some other projects, but it's all sort of mission driven now, where I was before this entrepreneur that had trouble with alcohol. Now I'm an entrepreneur that's mission driven to help people overcome the same issues that I did.
It's a great, I love that. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that you and I, connect on and share is this being an example of what's possible for people. And because the narrative that we hear so often in the alcohol space is really rooted in that narrative from AA, right? So you talked about being powerless and a disease model, and all of that comes right from Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been the gestalt leader regarding alcohol and how we view it and recovery and how we view it for years. And not because, I mean, decades, not because it really deserves it in terms of science, but because it's been, it got a lot of support from the legal system, being court mandated. And while it's a great program for many people, and again, I don't want to I'm not slamming it in terms of like its efficacy. If it works for people, then great. And if it works for you, phenomenal. But there's a lot of people, you and I included, and many people that I've talked to who just don't feel like being claiming themselves to be, as an alcoholic, first of all, or to say I'm powerless over this. And so finding a system and finding ways to change this, really talking about it in the terms of habit change and, positive health outcomes is a very different conversation than most people have been having around alcohol for years.
Absolutely. I mean, I strongly believe that your behaviors do not define who you are, because behaviors can be changed. And if your identity is one thing, then that's suggesting there's permanence there. And I don't like to knock the traditional models for those who they work. The only, I think, criticism I would have is that there's a lot of a mindset around it that it is the be all end all, and if you're not aligned to it, then well, you can't be part of it, and good luck. You're going to go suffer until you come back. Whereas
Right.
what I'm really, yeah, it,
You,
there
you're
are other,
kidding. You're just
whatever
kidding
solution
yourself,
you,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So my pushback is only to be more open-minded that there are other ways to achieve success that align with the person's their own definition of what success looks like.
So you tell me about your deep dive into science and data. It where did that take you in terms of helping change your belief system around alcohol, and what really, again, kind of then inspired you to write the book and get involved in the ways that you have been with Sunnyside?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just kind of like not get too sciencey. I'll stay more like high level. So what I'll go back to my story a little bit. And I said that I did a lot of 30-day challenges to myself. I wouldn't say a lot. I did a couple, right? But they were really hard. There were many that I failed. And when I did step out of those 30-day challenges, it didn't stick. And then one mountain bike ride with a friend of mine who's a doctor, a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Robin Terranella. And he was telling me that he actually, which I didn't know, worked in part-time as a consultant for a substance abuse program. And he gave, in addition to their medicated treatment, some protocols around supplementations. And he was explaining that like when your body's supported in specific ways, your nervous system, of course, you know, your heart, I mean, your liver and your gut, but really also sleep is difficult when you make these adjustments. And so he gave me some supplements that could help stabilize mood, get better sleep when you're making this transition, because a lot of that cycle comes in when you're coming down on that happy hour that I'd say, where I'd say, oh, it was such a tough day and I really just want some relief here. A lot of that was also, looking back, was biological, because we go, even in moderate amounts, we go in this cycle between 12 and 24 hours, and it's a mini withdrawal. And so a lot of times these cravings come up as, you know, we think that we're maybe being weak, but it's actually sort of the body and decision fatigue and a number of things that are combined there that are working against you that make breaking that habit so hard. And so that first step there, unbeknownst to me, I think was quite pivotal. Now, that was only that, just like you say, a supplement, it was supplemental to a lot of the things
Right.
that I was doing. So I started that, and I really started doing this 30-day break for myself pretty like resolute. I'm going to do this. And I remember sitting at the gas pump at a gas station outside of Scottsdale. You know, the mountains were in the background. It was the day that I hit 30 days. And of course, I could have gone into the gas station and said, I hit 30 days, I'm going to have my drink. But I sat there and pumped gas and I said to myself, you know what? I think I've never gone 60 days as an adult. You know, in my life, I've never gone 60 days. Why don't I just do that? Like, what harm could that do to give it a try? Yeah, this 30 was challenging. So I leaned through the window into the car and said to my wife, you know, I think I'm going to do 60 days. And she's like, do it. You should do it. And so I went the 60 days. And what I realized was going that 60 days is that it was not nearly as hard as the first 30. And
Hmm.
so I got to the 60 days and I thought to myself, without as much thought as the last time, why don't I go 90? 90's like, I have absolutely never done that. And I got to 90. And to be honest, I just kept going and I went just short of a year. I really didn't count the days, but there were times in there that, of course, I thought about um, having alcohol, but it had like completely changed. It was not a daily struggle. It was not like even a weekly struggle in many ways. And so as I got towards the end of that, things were going really good. You know, I felt
Mhm.
like everything in my life was going good, but I did, just in the same experimental way that I had stepped into that, I had the same experimental mindset of, uh, can I have alcohol again and not go back to where I was, of nightly drinking wine in excess? And some people might ask, well, if it was going so great, why would you do that? Well, I just didn't want this big stigma around something that I could never touch, which I hadn't even proven to myself I could never touch again or not. And so I ran some experiments. Can I have some alcohol and not go back to, because the goal was never to quit drinking forever. The goal was to stop drinking every single night and to break that loop, which I had. And so I experimented by having alcohol here and there. And lo and behold, I didn't go back to nightly drinking, and I have never gone back to nightly drinking. And it's been 5 years, you know.
Yeah. You and I are like preaching to the choir back and forth between us because we kind of come from the same space in terms of it being a nightly habit and a daily habit that we wanted to break free from. And, I am very much someone who no longer drinks alcohol on a nightly basis, but I do typically include alcohol in my life in a more regular basis and always have. And people, constantly question that it's hard for me, or that it's challenging, or don't I find that when I drink on the weekends that then I want to keep going on, the weekdays. And I don't know about you, but the answer for me is just a very easy no. That actually doesn't happened to me because the same way that you build any other type of habit pattern, positive or negative, I am now, this is just the way I do things. And I don't have a lot of dissonance with myself. And I don't find there to be a struggle. I'm very cognizant too, I guess. One of the things I appreciated about your book is, more of the understanding again, like the alcohol science and things, understanding dopamine and things like that. I tell people all the time when I include alcohol, I also am not ever geared towards over drinking. And I think that too kind of is important because I think it would be hard if you were over drinking on the weekends not to want to continue to over drink, or push more. It's about finding a way to, if you're going to include it, to be ever mindful and to really, it's not a when you say like when you were kind of iterating and experimenting with it, I assume you were trying to find like you're not going to go in and try to drink to excess because that's just not a positive way to include alcohol in your life, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was very, very cautious, right? And
Yeah.
very, very mindful on that side. And part of the question that I didn't quite answer to your last one around, the sort of the methodology and what I realized when I looked back in retrospect, which is when I wrote the book, which was like after I did about a year of experimentation and taking a break. And what I realized is that number one, understanding what's going on in your mind and your body, and to be able to recognize things within your day that are weak points, things like decision fatigue. Our brain makes conscious and unconscious, like in the thousands as far as decisions, and realizing that like at the end of the day, you're just fried and you're not going to make good decisions. That's why many times in the morning, you're resolute, you're a completely different person. So I started really digging into those things. But one of the main components for me that I realized is that the big marked difference between my previous failures and my new success was the length of time that I gave myself. So instead of the 30 days, I went the 90 days and beyond. And that's really where I dug in. And there are some good studies, the Lally study that says anywhere for a moderate to complex habit to form will take, the mean is around 66 days. The range for new habits to be formed are anywhere from 18 to 256 days. So 18 being something like, you brush your teeth, but you don't floss. So now you're going to start flossing. Like in 2 weeks, you could create that habit to be automatic. For more complex people, it could be all the way up to 256 days for like training for a marathon or something like that. And alcohol falls into this moderate to complex, leaning towards, in my opinion, the complex side, depending on your history, depth of drinking, and also just personality traits. That's sort of on a sliding scale. And so a big part of my book originally, I've sort of changed a little bit of my thoughts and ideas to be a little bit more universal, is that you need to sustain change at least for 66 days. That's what I wrote about. I really believe, though, that the safe number is 90 days, universally speaking. And the book is really around getting to 90 days, stepping out of your current habit completely and giving you the understanding of what's going on in your body and why you're making these decisions and what's going on and why sleep hard and um, why do I feel this way, and how, doing things like journaling. So like a lot of tools, but I've come to realize that I personally, and there are people just like me, absolutely had to fully step out for 90 days in order to reset and recalibrate. However, I have done more research and talked to more people, and I believe that 90 days and that long-term change can happen based on sustaining any habit. So if you are drinking every night, and you can change to drinking only on Monday and Wednesday in a moderate amount and sustain that for 90 days, I think that similar effects can be achieved without the same sort of prescriptive roadmap.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I agree with you. I mean, I think that any time that you take a more extended break from any type of habit that's no longer serving you, that's a tactical decision that supports sustainable change. That's what I think about it. But I also believe, and I know you and I agree on this, that if you don't address the underlying reasons that you developed the habit in the first place, that even taking a 90-day break won't necessarily, create the positive change that you want. Because I don't know. I've talked to many people who have taken extended breaks and then, even up to a year, and then gone back, slipped into that negative
Mhm.
habit pattern again when life gets difficult. And so we have to understand and make and connect those dots to be able to understand why we developed the habit in the first place, especially with regards to alcohol. Because for most people, it isn't just I mean, for you, it sounds like there was definitely a timing and a ritual in terms of creating some, a, a separation between your entrepreneurial space and your evening time. And that is very, definitely a typical pattern. But there was also an underlying belief system that it was going to help you relax and unwind too. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a big part of what I wrote about and came to know, and also a big part of the journey, which is also why I think you you absolutely, I was never a journaler. And one of the most life-changing things that I started to do, which I also attribute to, is that I started journaling. And I started journaling not like a Dear Diary journal. I started journaling through like what's going on in my mind. What am I seeking to hear with the alcohol? Because it's not that I really wanted the alcohol. I wanted what the alcohol I thought was providing. And I think you really have to get down to what is your why? What is your why, number one, for what you're doing? And what is your why for wanting to make change? And then also, once addressing and identifying those things, really placing the positive benefit and emphasis and North Star on like why you really want this change. And to remind yourself that whether it's to be the greatest version and whether it's to show up for your family, whatever it is, you really have to have a mission statement, a
Yeah.
statement of purpose behind what you're doing, and the life that you want to build. Because if you don't have that, then you're really just um, trying to check some boxes, that
Yeah.
maybe you forget to check those boxes over time, like you said, over 90 days, a year. Yeah, like that fades, and those you can slip back into old habits for sure.
Hey, it's Molly, here to talk to you about Sunnyside. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that Sunnyside is my number one recommendation for drinking apps that help you change your relationship with alcohol. I've been a Sunnyside partner for more than 3 years now. And one of the key reasons that I chose Sunnyside to be my app of choice is that they are really focused on continuous improvement, just like me. And for you, it is continuous improvement of the app in terms of how the customer is experiencing it. They've completely redesigned the progress tab from the ground up, which makes it easier for you to see your progress over time. They've introduced mini infographics to help you better see the big picture of drinks reduced and how dry days have added up since you joined Sunnyside. They have a dry day streak tracker now for those of you that are focused on taking a real extended break from drinking. And they intelligently surface trends in your data to highlight any positive things for you, and like a steady decrease in overall drinks over the course of time. These changes and these improvements are something that Sunnyside has continued to do ever since I started working with them. You can check it out over at sunnyside.co/Molly and get started on a 15-day free trial today. I love the fact that you brought up journaling because I say it all the time. You have to be able to connect those dots. And journaling is one of the easiest and best ways to help you connect those dots. And I'm sure that you found that not only through writing the book, but it really does uh, secure your reasoning and help you, anytime that you're trying to get seek clarity around your behavior. Writing things down is a really great way to get that process started.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much studies around. It's dismissed as it couldn't be that good because it's so easy to do and accessible, but it really is that good. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of studies around doing it actually pen to paper between learning and processing and retaining information. But I also think it's not only to work out new thoughts, put to unload your inner monologue, but it's also a really good place to historically look at the growth of what you've come like and also identify patterns. So you can look through your journal and see like, okay, every Wednesday I was feeling this way. What was I really wanting to get out of that? Why did I fail? But also you can see the growth of like, look how much anxiety I had then and look at where I am today. It serves in so many different ways.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about consistency because I don't know about you, but one of the things that I used to have a real self-limiting belief around my ability to be consistent, even though I had a lot of examples in my life that would have said otherwise. For some reason, I had a lot of narrative around like I was somebody who was had great ideas and I could start, but I never finished and things like that. And that's why I'm so big on like small steps and why I believe in just like you're talking about, like even building a habit pattern around journaling isn't something that people find necessarily easy or consistent to do. So, talk to me about your belief around consistency and how people can build it and how important it is for long term sustainable change.
Yeah, I think consistency inch by inch, then leading to mile by mile leads to big changes. And so if I want to default to my own story a little bit there, I could never at the start be consistent to say I almost went a year without drinking if that was like how I wanted to start being consistent. It started with just like, let me get through this first week, let me get through this 30 days, let me get through the 60 days. Now those and so on. And those are sort of like on the large scale. I took a big bite out of it and that's sort of my personality. But on the other spectrum for different things in my life, I have to take a much smaller stance to get started. And so what I love about consistency is that you don't have to start with your like end big goal. You can
Yeah.
just start with one thing that seems manageable at this time that you can get started with today and hold that consistency. And over time, when you hold that consistency, all of a sudden, this is something that you're doing. And that next piece, whether it be connecting to that end goal immediately or it takes the next step to get consistent on that part of it, allows for big transformation to happen. Because I really do think that your destiny is defined in your daily actions. And when
Yeah,
you stay consistent, whether it's small or big to start, it leads to big change.
absolutely. And I also think that if we understand that it's small steps and small changes, it also means that if we fall off course or if we have, you know, we take a couple or have a couple of missteps or a couple of off-plan days, we can get back to it and we can start rebuilding it. And consistency, it is what you do on a consistent basis over the course of your life that will be your life story. That will be who you are. That will be who you become. And we have opportunity. Every choice is a chance to vote for who we're becoming. And anytime that we take an off step is just another, it doesn't mean that we have to just throw in the towel and quit trying. It just means like, oh yeah, that's just normal. That's what happens in life. And now we just got to get back to who it is that, to making the choices that align with who I am and who I want to become.
Absolutely. I mean, consistency builds sustainability. And there is also science and studies that show that in consistent behavior during habit change, that, or I guess we'll call them derailment, whatever we want to say, like a misstep.
Yeah.
There is actually scientific studies that show that occasional missteps from the new habit that you're trying to form, and you revert to the old one temporarily, that it actually, in that consistency, does not derail habit change in any way.
Yeah, it actually is. Your brain actually is more engaged and more active in those learning, in those struggle moments, than it is if it's just everything always goes just completely to plan.
Yeah, and you're not starting over at day one, right?
Yeah, right.
You're starting at whatever day you're at.
Yeah, and just building from there. Mike, I
Yeah.
appreciate you hanging with me during some technological challenges, folks, and some spotty internet. And let's talk about where people can connect with you personally and find out more about everything that you're doing.
Oh, I'd love that. So, a couple places people could go. My personal website is my last name, hardenbrook.com. I run the podcast for Sunnyside, so you can go check out sunnyside.co. And I have a supplement business that's all doctor formulated supplements to help people change their habits around alcohol, or help to maintain their health and protect their health when they're drinking in moderation. And you can go check out more information around that at trycloud9.com.
Awesome. Mike, it is really wonderful to finally catch up with you. And thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to the next opportunity. Hopefully, it won't be a year from now, but sometime when we can chat again.
Sounds great to me. I had a blast. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 2 different ways, and you can learn about them over at my website. Go to www.mollywatts.com/workwithme, or reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and decide what might work best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going. If there's one thing I know, it's that change is way easier when you stop trying to do it alone.